I'd like to call the February 3rd Facilities and Operations Subcommittee meeting to order. Madam Secretary, roll call, please.
Mr. Costa?
Here.
Mr. Hart?
Here.
Mr. Hetzel?
Here. I'd like to acknowledge that Paul Hart is joining us virtually. Will everyone join me please in saluting the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the open meeting law, pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made whether perceived or unperceived by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. All right. First order of business, we have citizens input. We did receive one letter for citizens input from Colin Dias on February 2nd. He lives at 560 Ray Street, Fall River, Mass. Chairs determined that the content of the citizens input violates the current school committee policy BEDH. There's section 4, improper comments or remarks will not be allowed. Defamatory or abusive remarks are always out of order. If a speaker persists in improper conduct or remarks, the chairperson may terminate that individual's privilege of address. And section 5, speakers may offer objective criticisms or concerns regarding school operations or programs, but in public session, the committee will not hear personal complaints of school personnel, nor against any member of the school community. Administrative channels are the proper means for disposition of legitimate complaints involving staff members. We have no other citizens input?
No, we do not.
No, thank you. Moving on to discussion. First item for discussion tonight is discussion and vote to refer SRO memorandum of understanding with the police department. And with us tonight we have Sergeant Galveo from the Fall River Police Department. I'm not sure, and also obviously Dr. Malone, the superintendent of the Fall River Public Schools, a number of other people with us in the room. Who would like to speak on this first? All right, Superintendent.
I'm very appreciative that Sergeant Galveo is here tonight to be able to answer questions. Sergeant and I, since he's come on board with Ken Pacheco, have worked very closely together, and we're very appreciative of our partnership and I think a very strong working relationship. Our MOU that we've had under the new law that was passed in 2018 is 2 years old. Over the past several months, the sergeants come to me and said, on our side, we need to update the MOU for their accreditation purposes. And on our side, we said we should update it regularly anyway. So he and I worked over the last several months with the assistance of Deb Cabral to modify and amend some certain language in the MOU. What we're proposing for changes, the old language, the current language is in yellow. And what we're proposing is what is in red. And there are, I think, 4 sections throughout the document where there is some new language that we're proposing to the committee. What we would like is to, of course, have the sergeant present, answer questions, we can answer questions. And then what we would like to do is, if we can come to an agreement, refer to the full committee as a first read. And then have a first read at the upcoming school committee meeting, and then a second read in the meetings that follow. Interestingly, there will also be new changes, regulatory and legal. So this document, as a living document, would be in place for another year. A year from now, we're gonna need to do another model one based on the state's agreements. So this would be what we do for this upcoming full year, and then we'd be back in FY, or in school year 22. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sergeant to help discuss.
Yes, so the chief asked me, and along with our accreditation personnel, if we could update our MOU. It was dated 2018. I said, sure, I'll talk to the superintendent about it. During that time, there was a police reform bill that was passed. There's a lot of language and requirements that are required in that bill, and it pertains to SROs, MOUs. So my understanding and what the chief has presented to me is that a lot of these changes are going to take place early next year. There's an SRO MOU commission that's going to come up with a model MOU for all municipalities or districts. So it's going to be up to us at that point to tailor our existing MOU to their model MOU. So, but for now, he wanted me to just kind of take a look at our current MOU, see if we can tidy up some sections of it to get it in line with our standard operating procedures and just clear things up. And there was a school committee member that brought some issues up to the chief. He brought it to my attention, told me to run it by the superintendent, and we were in agreement with a lot of those recommendations. So, and now this is what we have presented to us.
So, in terms of operating, what we discussed was the change in date. I will note process on the first page. We proposed June, but really what that date would be the date of adoption. So I just want to note that for the record. On the second page, we added a bullet around assist with maintaining orderly environment during the days and at school events, which is what we do. Under the next section, around the flex time, what we wanted to ensure is that we can manage that framework. So the language that we would like to replace says, however, the SROs will be allowed to receive flex time if they wish to work their schedules to work at after-school events and functions. And what we included in here, that would have to be in consultation with the principal and the supervisor for approval, and what the process is. So it's not changing anything other than it's requiring the supervision part of that, an approval process. To make it very clear what that would look like. On the next page, some very technical things under item 5. This is law enforcement side, is that we talked about the chief of police using the SROs on a temporary basis in case of emergency. Now, granted, Monday, we had some usage of that because as you know, we closed the buildings on Monday, but there was snow work and emergency stuff, so we assisted there. That's the kind of communications that we have. This is very technical for hazmat and some other things. And then on the next page, under supervisory responsibilities, we talked a lot about the language that had monthly meeting. We thought that was excessive, so what we wanted was quarterly formal meetings and ongoing open communication between the supervisor and the building principals. And we've had no complaints this year at all in terms of any communication. So I don't want anyone to think that there's been the communication channels between the supervisor and the building principals has been great. And I think what we're trying to do here is make sure that there's a formal meeting and then ongoing open access communication, and we articulate that. And then on the final page, under data collection, talks about duties and reporting, and what we wanted to make sure that we had here is that there was a monthly summary report. So for example, I would be able to report exactly how many interactions there were around certain things, and I could be able to share that with the committee or other members at certain times. So again, where it's yellow, the language would be removed, replaced in red. If it's just in red with no yellow, we're asking to add that language.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions? Mark?
Not necessarily a question, just more of a comment under the work schedule, I guess. And I understand it sometimes it's difficult for the SROs to juggle, makes their day longer if they're staying for athletic events. My only concern with that is if we take away some coverage during school day to let them flex it in the evening, that leaves us potentially at the high school level. I'm thinking, I mean, there may be occasions, I guess, when we had intramurals going, SROs maybe helping out on a Saturday or stuff like that, or showing up to an event or helping out. And I don't mind the way it's set up here, just that flex in the morning where students are coming into the building.
Yep.
If it's a night of a game where the SRO is gonna flex their schedule that day and they're not coming in until later, we have kids coming into the building, you know, if there's a situation where the SRO is needed, how is that gonna be covered, or?
Well, I mean, the way it's written in that section 3, start and end times will conform to normal school hours. I think that's just an option for SROs in conjunction, you know, with speaking to the principal and myself.
Mhm.
If that's an option that they want to take for that day, for whatever reason, it's there. All my SROs, they always show up before school starts, and they're leaving after
Well
school,
after, right.
well after school ends. So we just wanted to put it in there because the old language used the term flex time, which wasn't very clear to us. So we wanted to kind of clean that up and say, hey,
Right.
we're really talking about modifying their schedule. If
Right.
that's something that works out with the principal and myself, that's something that there would be an option for them.
So walk me through how that would happen, and if you don't know Sergeant Gavarro, that's fine, I
Mhm.
understand the role's fairly new to you. But, so walk me through traditionally, so if an SRO wanted to stay or work for an athletic event after school, say at the high school,
Mhm.
they would come in their regularly normal schedule hours in the morning, and then how would they account for their time staying later? Would that be paid in overtime, or is that like a comp time thing where they can use it at a later date
It all gets paid at an overtime rate.
at an overtime rate?
Correct. We have separate overtime slips that get submitted
Yep.
and gets billed to the school department.
Okay. And so under this, that'll essentially or potentially could eliminate the overtime? Or-
Well, I mean, it's something that if it's an option
Yeah.
for the SRO, if it works for the SRO and if it works for the principal, then it's an available option.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, everyone's always looking to find a way to curb overtime. I just don't particularly care to do that when it comes to safety.
Well, we
And-
call
and
it the
so-
details.
Right. No, and
Right.
that's true.
Right.
If we need a detail, we'll have a
But
paid
this is,
detail
because
there.
remember, we get different offices when we do the details at the
Right.
basketball and stuff.
No,
So this was to give these guys an ability to do the extra with the,
right.
yeah.
My only concern is someone's watching the athletic calendar, saying, okay, Durfee's got events this week, and, you know, I just wanna make sure that we got that coverage we need, particularly at the high school. That's my only concern. If that SRO's on a flex, what's gonna be the plan to cover that school in the case of an event, an emergency? Is that gonna be the sergeant who's gonna swing through and cover that, or you're gonna pull from another school, or? I just wanna make sure there's a contingency in place. We don't have to particularly announce it here. I just wanna make sure that the school's covered in the event, and we're not gonna broadcast that, yeah, they're flexing their time, they're not gonna be there in the morning, for safety reasons, obviously, but
Right.
I just wanna make sure that there's a contingency in place, so that if the decision's made by you, Sergeant, and the principal, that that's gonna happen, that everybody knows that if something goes down between 8 and 10, or whatever those hours are, who's the go-to? What's the plan? Is it gonna be a sector car? Is it gonna be, you know, a rotating basis? It's gonna be the nearest school? I just wanna make sure that there's coverage in the event that it's needed.
Yep.
And not a situation where the headline is, you know,
We didn't have anyone.
no one was there, or the SRO was on flex time that day, or some craziness. So I'm okay with this happening like this. I think it's important to have the SROs who work in the building. You know, the student body, the kids like to see them.
Right.
They like to see them at these events. I'm sure they like to attend them as well, you know, to build that camaraderie with the student population and the staff. I just want to make sure that if that happens, that there's something in place for those hours where that flex is occurring.
Right, right.
Other than that, I mean, the rest of it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, I think it's well written. If it conforms to the, you know, SOPs that you have on your end, Sarge, I'm okay with it. I absolutely agree with 5. You know, one of the things we talked about when it became an issue in the summertime was that, okay, when the pandemic hit and SROs were doing non-traditional SRO work for us, assisting with investigations. Well, I guess that's more traditional, but when they were out doing wellness checks on families and helping with the escort and staff out to the homes, there was a lot of blowback from people in the community about, well, if the schools are closed, where are they? Why aren't they working in a car or in the city side? The way I had explained it to the chief and to the superintendent, and I think this spells it out, that in the event that the city has a need and we don't have that need at that time, then absolutely. We're gonna work together. I mean, we're one community with these resources, and if we're not using them and the chief feels the need to call the superintendent after speaking with you, and they decide, hey, listen, the SROs are gonna be pulled for a detail or some sort of events happening, we need that extra support, then absolutely, the citizens of Fall River deserve that extra layer. So I like that flexibility, that if it's needed, it's there. And I would say, even if the language went a little further to not specifically just to those events, that if the city or the chief had a need, that through communication with the superintendent, if the agreement was made, that they could work whatever needed on the city side.
We could just add hazmat incident or other emergency.
Yeah, or other situations mutually agreed upon between the chief of police and the superintendent of schools. I don't want to hamstring someone reading this later to say, well, it's not a hazmat, it's not a mess, but the chief saying, hey, listen, you know what, unfortunately, I got X amount of offices that are out, and I got holes to fill, and I gotta, hire for overtime or pull cars, off the street because I don't have bodies. If we can assist and make that happen and it works for everybody, then I think that's, a good thing.
So we could add the language after that, says, comma, or other emergencies and/or crisis agreed to by chief and superintendent.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be a crisis. It could
Right.
just be a situation where
Crisis situation.
there's something going on the city side, and our buildings, for whatever reason, are gonna be closed, and the chief says, hey, listen, next week on a Tuesday, I need extra support.
Yeah.
You guys are closed. Can you help us out? I think we should be able to work together on that, but other than that, I think it's fine. Sarge, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
It's always, been my experience over the many years that SROs have worked out really well in the schools. I see the work that they do that they don't even get recognized for, just the going above and beyond to, walk that child home after picking up their bag lunch to one of our housing, complexes, or just stopping in and doing those checks, those wellness checks that, aren't typically viewed as, SRO duties, but they're occurring. And the partnership has worked out well, and I'm happy to support referring this to the full committee. I yield, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Mr. Hart, discussion?
No questions.
All right, well, hearing no further discussion, I thank
Motion to
you very
refer
much
to
for
full
being
committee?
here. Motion has been made to refer to full committee. Looking for a second? Paul,
Make the
motion,
motion.
Paul, yeah, Mark made the motion. We have a second to refer to the full committee?
It's muted now.
You muted your phone, Paul. Yep, Paul seconds it. I saw him trying to get that phone unmuted, Paul.
He's got that classic woodworking.
Yeah, he does. All right.
Roll call?
I want to go roll
Oh, you know
call.
why? He's got his earphones.
Mr. Costa?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Mr. Hart, give us a thumbs up for a yes on the roll call for the vote. Nope.
Can't you just go back to the phone call?
He put his AirPods in,
His
yeah.
AirPods overtook his microphone on his phone. I'm texting him, but I don't think he's. And he's not texting me back now.
Paul,
I second it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, all right.
I apologize about this.
Thank you, and we called, we asked Madam Secretary for roll call.
I vote yes.
All right, thank you.
Mr.
Move it
Hudson.
on.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
All right, motion passes, it will be referred to the full committee. Thank you very much for being here, Sergeant Galvin,
Sarge,
appreciate it.
thank you.
Yep,
Do
you're
our
welcome.
best
Thank
to,
you. Appreciate it.
keep our buildings to tone, we thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
So we'll have a first read at the February 8th committee meeting. Does the sergeant need to be present for that?
I mean, ideally, the committee has additional questions that the subcommittee didn't
Yeah.
address. It would be helpful, Sarge, if you're available, that would be great.
All right,
Um,
all right, so, let me just think for a second. All right, I'll let you know because I can give you the specific time, because we have something to do that's probably gonna be a half hour, and then we can get you on.
Yeah, and if for some reason you're tied up and you can free up and swing by, we'll go back to it. Just so we don't tie you up, so you have other duties going on.
Understood. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Sergeant.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care.
All right. Next item on the agenda tonight, we have a discussion update on the 2020-2021 capital projects. I believe will be presented by Chief Operating Officer Kenny Pacheco. Kenny, how you doing?
Good, good. So the document that we produced a year or so ago is reproduced here with the updates built in. Just about every building had the COVID and security atriums built into the systems. We also have some other repairs to the buildings and upgrades to the buildings that have been accomplished. We're still moving forward with our 3 paths for egress at Sylvia, Talbot, parking lot, and Henry Lodge. Those projects are engineered, and we're about ready to move on 2 of them. Sylvia is still in the stage for wetland reclamation and also approvals. So that one's gonna be falling a little bit further behind than the other 2, but the other 2 should be ready for a spring, summer kickoff.
Excellent.
And then the Durfee project updated also. It's, we're about 5 months away from substantial completion. From completion. Substantial completion in about 4 months, and things are moving along nicely. A couple of hiccups here and there that we will stay on top of, but overall, the building is looking really, really good.
Excellent. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just have one question regarding the Sylvia.
Yes.
You said it got pushed back. Do we have a timeline?
It's not by us,
Right.
it's further behind. So
So
it's
that's
it's
done
a
by the
2-year, right, it's a
Mass
2-year
EPA, right?
DEP, EPA, because of the wetlands that it needs to pass through. So
Right.
we need to duplicate those wetlands somewhere on the property that we're gonna pass through. And once that approval goes through, then we can move on the next step, which is to actually do the construction. The construction will be faster than the process, much faster. The road is not that long, not that wide. It's not a very complicated construction project once we get past the wetland piece.
So we had talked about relocating that wetlands some time ago.
Yes.
Was that not a feasible plan?
It was
or-
not what they wanted. So basically, they're going to allow us, from what the engineers are saying, to enlarge one of our current holding or retention ponds.
Right,
And that's going to be able to replicate it. It's just that we may have to do more than one. Because of the location, the front retention pond is already, I think, as large as we can have it because of property issues.
mhm,
So we're gonna go to one of the other, there's 5 on that property. We're gonna go to one of the smaller ones, enlarge that one, that'll give us the capacity, and we'll pipe, because some of those retention ponds tie into each other. So we'll pipe whatever we need to pipe, shouldn't be that evasive to get from one to the other. But I think that's gonna be the only glitch we have. There may be a structure a box that we would put in that people would drive over. But that would be a road, you know, they wouldn't know they're driving over it, but it's
Right,
just
we
gonna
had
be
talked
so that we
about
can
that,
get
it would
that
be sort of
flow.
like a small.
It's kind of a bridge,
Like a
right,
bridge, like a
right.
wooden bridge or
But
whatever.
it's a
they'd have to
box
go over.
culvert that would, you know, would allow that.
In terms of cost, any change in the cost from,
No, the costs haven't increased at all.
so we're still talking, even though we have to possibly pipe from one catch basin to the next?
It shouldn't, it's a
Still falls
minor,
within
it's a,
the scope
right,
of the-
it's a minor, scope change, yes.
I mean, I, you know, can't say enough about the amount of capital work that we've done on these buildings. Not just the school department, but the projects we've partnered with the city, and used, and also the state, and used of the MSBA money. You know, the type of improvements we've been making to these buildings, was long overdue. These buildings were certainly hurting for a long time, and I'm glad they're now getting the attention. You know, preventative maintenance is certainly a lot cheaper than building sometimes, and so if we need to keep up with these buildings, it's our obligation, and if we can't do it, I think we've done a good job utilizing MSBA funds and working with the city too to stay on the radar for capital improvements, but
We're close to 5 million on our side alone.
5 million in just school
School
department
funds,
expenditures,
exactly,
not
right, over the last
MSBA
4
or-
years. Right, MSBA is another story, but, because we're
Yeah.
well over 300 million.
Yeah,
uh,
and again, I mean, I think it speaks to, you know, the committee and the administration's focus on making sure the buildings get the attention they need. You know, when we're up against minimum net school spending in budgets year after year, you know, the decision about what we do with the money we have often goes directly back into classes and with staff and personnel. So I think with one-time money from the city, you know, for health insurance adjustments, you know, I think it's freed up that money to do not just the work on the physical buildings, but even just the infrastructure in terms of technology and other investments we've made. So keep up that good work. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Costa. Mr. Hart, discussion?
Just one really quick point. I just wanted to make sure, and I think Mr. Vice Chair or you could to reiterate to me though, and to clarify, there's no really, everything, it seems everything's on target with the project. If this is just an update that you're giving us for discuss, don't anticipate any hiccups.
No, I mean, we have
Any
minor,
major hiccups.
yeah, we have minor issues that we're constantly battling with, but there's nothing, nothing that we can't do within the confines of what we currently have.
All I needed to hear. Keep up the great work, Kenny. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. All right, is it possible we can send this to the full committee just for their review so they can see the update?
And I think we may have, we may be updating the cost sheet to go with it,
Perfect.
so we will
Is
work
it
on
under
that.
the superintendent's report in the agenda?
It is not, I can add it. Well, capital improvement, I think that Durfee projects is, but not the whole.
Durfee, not the whole thing?
No, it can be changed if you'd like.
Yeah, why don't we just do that?
Capital project?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to refer to the full committee.
All right,
Second.
motion has been made to refer to full committee.
Second.
Second has been made by Mr. Costa.
I'll put it under the soups report.
Any more discussion on that? No discussion, hearing none. Madam Secretary, roll call, please.
Mr. Costa?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Hetzler?
Yes. All right, motion passes. We sent to the full committee. Excellent. Next item up for discussion tonight is vote to refer the Chief Information Officer job description.
You want me
I put a motion on the table, Mr. Chair, motion to approve.
All right.
Refer.
Motion has been made to approve and refer the Chief Information Officer
No,
job.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Hart. Discussion and presentation, if not first.
Sure, so, as the summer wore on, more spring, summer, we realized the magnitude of the technology piece, both in our infrastructure and also in devices. getting home to all the students and also our faculty and staff. And the job of managing that fell on three individuals who were all in their own way working on their particular pieces. And I did the best I could to orchestrate that. However, I was out of tune, not my wheelhouse. And I think that the job is that important to the district. It's touching us in every department, in every discipline. And it's important for us to have someone overseeing that particular piece of what we do, and nothing else. And my time is I just don't have it to give it up, with the other items. So I think that chief information officer position is so vital at this time. It came to light. It showed us how desperately we needed this piece. And I think that now more than ever, having that person concentrating, he or she will have their plate full all the time. And because of the changing technology, because of the way all of this stuff is happening, it came to light obviously with the pandemic, but it was what we needed to move us forward. And I think that this position will allow that the three individuals, along with everyone else in those departments, to be able to have a person at the top who understands their language, understands what their needs are, and will move us much quicker to where we need to be and keep us there.
Excellent. Discussion. Mr. Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having had a CIO in the district prior, when we had probably, I don't know, at least half, if not a quarter of the technology that we have now, I thought the position worked very well. Back when we had it, we unfortunately during some really tough budget times made a decision that we would eliminate that position. I think now, given the amount of technology that the district has invested in over the last several years, in terms of Chromebooks and hotspots, and I mean even just the wiring that we've done, the data upgrades, the network upgrades. I mean, Mr. Cabral has done a great job with the rollout of new equipment, overseeing that. But I really think with the dollar amount and the investment that the district's made, we really should have somebody in that management, in that supervisory position, if you will, to sort of oversee that. I think the schools have done a great job, the staff that we have. I think this would be helpful to have someone sort of oversee that and sort of be able to work with that team that are out there in the schools doing this work day in and day out, to oversee that and to also plan for the future. Identify which areas we need to make additional investments in and be able to have that seat at the table to speak to that. So, I don't have it in front of us, but I mean, maybe for the full meeting, you can get the information to us, probably through Mr. Almeida, but how much has the district actually spent in the last 5 years or so in terms of its investment in technology? And so it's millions of dollars, I know that.
Millions.
I mean, I know it's millions of dollars, and that's the reason why I feel confident supporting this, because with that kind of expenditure, with that kind of money invested, there really should be a point person, someone who oversees that. And I think it's a position that we probably needed years ago, but given budgets and managing budgets, it wasn't something that was proposed then. But with the pandemic, I think it's opened our eyes to the need for someone to sort of lead that department. And so I'll support it. But if you could get, even if it's an accurate ballpark, I know it's millions of dollars, but both in CARES money, I'm sure,
We
and
spent $1 million this year. so far.
investments that we've made just out of our own budget. So, people will always say, oh, do you need another manager? Do you need another admin position, but the reality is with this kind of investment being made, you really have to have someone who can oversee that department and offer up that support to the team that's out there in the field doing this work. So I'll yield, but I'll certainly be in favor of supporting referring it to the full committee.
Thank you, Mr. Costa. Mr. Hart?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Ken, I just wanted, so if this goes to the full body and on Monday they approve, then you're gonna go out to bid for the, do an RFP out?
No, this is a position. This is a,
Job
we would be
description.
putting a job out,
Posted, yeah.
posting a job for someone to be hired.
Mr. Superintendent?
So, Mr. Harding, rest of the committee, the goal is I'm building this budget. This is what we talked about last year, this was on the, and then we brought forward, this is on the budget priority list. If I can get this in the budget, and it works, given the, constraints we have with all our other priorities, and this is a big one, we would, if the committee approved it, we would post it in the spring and hire for July 1.
Okay. And Kenny, you mentioned, yourself and 3 others are right now doing the technology in the Falls District?
Three others are doing the work, so they're managing it. So Scott is managing his portion, Brian's managing Data's portion, and Frank Farias is managing the software portion and the teaching side of that particular piece. So those 3 individuals, with their supporting staff, are managing that stuff right now. I just happen to be the person that they answer to
Yeah.
currently.
Okay.
But it's not a situation where the work isn't getting done. It's getting done. The issue is whether or not we're all playing to the same music here, or whether or
Yeah.
not we're working in silos. And I believe that person, this job, is going to be able to make all of that in sync. And I believe that person is going to be able to forecast a lot better than I can, being in that business, as to where we need to be and where we're going. We have some buildings that are much further advanced than others. If we take Durfee High School as our benchmark moving forward, we have a lot of work to do. And
Yeah.
that's probably what we're gonna need to do, is use that as our benchmark, and that's where we need to be. So that students coming up in the district, when they get to the high school, it's all gonna be natural to them. So I think that's what this position's gonna bring. But currently that we're doing this, but I believe the work is happening in silos. And not because they're trying to do it that way. I think it's just the fact that there's gotta be someone bringing that group and having that group gel. And this person, whoever he or she may be, is gonna be that person.
And not to go off the track a little bit, but I just wanted to, you brought up Durfee. Obviously, that's a major issue. That's a big technology.
It is.
Obviously. Is that thing, I mean, we're not behind in anything, or is everything up to date, or is that part? And do you see any kind of issues in the near future with any kind of technology issue right now as it currently stands with the people that we have working on the project?
No,
Or even in the district for that matter?
So technically, we just had a meeting the other day, and the technology piece is moving forward as presented and as expected. And we're ready to start going out to procurement for most of the equipment that is gonna be in that building, both infrastructure and hardware. So it's moving along nicely, and it's under control. And know that during the construction process, we have an army of people on the consultant side of this working, on the oversight side of this working on this particular piece, along with Scott, who's putting in countless hours, our friends at Fred TV, who are putting in countless hours working on this technology, and also Brian Michael Azak and Frank Farias, who have had input in all of these technology meetings to keep us updated and to keep the group who's responsible for putting all this together at the high school on track.
Okay, and, that's what I'm thinking just off the top of my head here. Do we, I mean, could it be possible that we actually hire from within? Maybe, I don't know, one of those, and maybe, I don't know, I'm just thinking a little bit ahead of maybe possibly saving money. But again, I mean, if it takes this kind of position to do that, then I'm all for it. But I was just thinking of someone maybe like, one of those three, like maybe, I know Scott's got a lot on his plate, but maybe could he possibly, you know, take on that kind of position while he's doing his other job? I mean, is that something that you're going to look at, or are we looking to bring somebody in the district?
I think it's a job posting, and I'm
Yeah,
sure that
yeah,
it's wide
okay.
open, it's wide open for anyone, as all jobs are in the district, for promotional opportunities, that posting will be there, and,
Search team.
yeah, there'll be a group together to interview and look for the best qualified person to do the job and lead the district in that direction.
All right, well, Mr. Chairman, I yield, and I'll vote to bring it to the full body.
Excellent, thank you. All right. Motion has been made and seconded, made by
Yep.
Mr. Costa, seconded by Mr. Hart. Any more discussion? Hearing none, roll call please.
Mr. Costa?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes, motion passes. All right, last item for discussion tonight, we have a vote to refer nutrition funds to New Durfee High School.
I'll put the motion on the
Make a
table.
motion to refer.
Oh, okay, motion made by Mr. Hart,
I'll second it.
seconded by Mr.
Discussion?
Costa. Discussion, before discussion, we'll ask
Sure.
Mr. Pacheco to give us a presentation.
So, in looking at the project, and the amount of, FF&E items, that the project has, within budget, we were looking at a way to, move the project, to possibly other items, that are not necessarily built into the budget, that we would like to do. For instance, the building skin, so to speak, on the field house. So that part of the project was not necessarily in the project. So it's being done out of contingency on residual funds from different buckets that are on the project of dollars. And we're looking to make sure that is completely finished when we're done with the project. There are also some tech items that may not have been some technology items that may not have been in the budget. But that moving along, when the project started to now, some technology items have changed. So looking to be able to infuse some dollars into the project, what we'd like to do is we'd like to use some residual funds, some funds that are left in or overage in the nutrition account, and purchase cafeteria tables, cafeteria furniture for the project. And what that would do is allow us to use these funds for a purpose that they were meant to be used for, and it would allow those dollars that we're going to buy cafeteria tables to be repurposed within the Durfee construction project. I believe that when we made the application, Kevin Almeida and I sat down. We wanted to be sure that the nutrition account was stable, healthy enough that it could sustain these kind of dollars. And he sent that paperwork in to DESI, so we applied to DESI. Any expenditure of nutrition money for any kind of equipment or anything over $5,000, they need to approve it ahead of time. So what we did was we applied to DESI for that approval. We received that approval actually yesterday, or the day before yesterday. That this was an allowable use under those funds, and here we are. You in your packet, you had a second item in here, and that was for vehicle, a refrigerated vehicle. Since then, that we don't need that particular piece. We don't need the funding because we had funding come through on a grant to purchase that vehicle. so we don't need to take it out of nutrition. So we're getting the vehicle, a 20-foot refrigerated truck, which will allow us to move frozen items and refrigerated items without being concerned about the quality of that item. Currently now we're having deliveries set up in all different places. Now deliveries will be going to a central location, and that central location will then distribute those, which will save us some dollars that we're paying these orders to be split up and dropped off in different places. We'll be able to do that with our people as they're doing their regular work in the course of the day. So the request is for $245,365.92 to be transferred from, to pay for, not to be transferred. We will get a bill for these tables and furniture sent to us, and we will pay that out of nutrition.
Excellent. Discussion.
Mr. Hart, anything else?
Nothing.
Oh,
Mr.
this-
Hart? Mr. Costa?
So essentially, what this should do theoretically is free up money that's being used for the project at the school, because FF&E was considered in
Yes,
the budget
yes.
for the new high school. So
These tables were in the budget for the
right.
new high school.
So the $245,365.92 will essentially, I don't want to say leave the school building account with that much money, but theoretically, that would be the hope that we could potentially use that money to offset the building money, and then ultimately, if there are needs as the project continues, whether it's exterior, interior, whatever, that we may be able to
Just about
help.
anything on that project, right?
Assist.
Undesignated funds.
So about $250,000 towards,
Exactly.
so, I mean, I think it's a sound plan. You know, these items are eligible, they do fall into nutrition. I mean, obviously, with approval from DESI, I think that's a good sign. Typically, our nutrition revolving fund has sufficient funds in it. I think they look forward to 3 months of capital, and it's usually got far more than that. And so I think we've done a good job in investing in nutrition vehicles and other nutritional, related expenditures we've been able to pick up through that account. And so, I think this is a no-brainer for the committee to decide, but with that, I yield, and I'll be supporting sending it to the full committee for consideration.
Excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, any discussion from you, Mr. Hart?
No, not at all.
All right, nothing further. I mean, I think it's great. We get to shift some of this money over, still use it for its purpose, and, free up that ability to use that money elsewhere in the project, which is excellent. Madam Secretary, roll call,
Something
please.
definitely needed, so absolutely.
Absolutely.
Mr. Costa?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes. Motion passes to refer that to the full committee. Any new business? Mr. Costa, Mr. Hart, no new business?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Hearing no new business, motion to adjourn that has been made and seconded. Made by Mr. Hart, seconded by Mr. Costa.
Mr. Costa?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes. All right, this meeting has been adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.